Okay. Good morning, everyone. I think we can start. Thank you so much for joining us in this series with KTS Events, Business Development Director Liz Axton, and IBM's leader of the Supplier Diversity Program for Europe, Middle East, and Africa, Andrea Finian. We are very excited to learn about KTS' journey to become an IBM supplier. I'm going to introduce Liz and Andrea, and we're going to start. Andrea, Liz, can you hear me?
Yes, perfectly. Thank you.
Okay. As the Business Development Director at KTS, Liz leads the agency's new client activity and pitch processes. With 17 years events industry experience, Liz has designed and managed a vast array of event-related projects for global brands throughout the technology, luxury, automotive, and financial services sectors, to name but a few. Liz also leads KTS' active presence within the WEConnect community and a variety of other external networks as the business continues to expand and diversify. KTS Events produces conferences, exhibitions, incentives, celebrations, product launches, and hospitality events. And we also have the privilege to have Andrea Finian with us, a very engaged supplier diversity leader located in Zurich, Switzerland. Andrea runs the Supplier Diversity Program for Europe, Middle East, and Africa for IBM since the beginning of 2019. Driven by spreading the word about supplier diversity in the European countries, where this topic is rarely known, by showing the impact supplier diversity has to the economy for corporations and minority-owned businesses. In 2017, IBM won the European Diversity Award for their Global Supplier Diversity Program and was recognized by Minority Business News USA as one of 2017 Corporate 101 America's Most Admired Corporations for Supplier Diversity. In this unique webinar, we will be hearing directly from Liz, the Business Development Director of KTS Events, about what it takes to become a supplier of a corporation like IBM. She will share some details about her journey, her learnings, and some advice. So please feel free to ask questions at the end of the webinar. You can also write at the Q&A section of your platform any questions you may have, so that at the end both Liz and Andrea can answer them. If you are not connected to the audio, please make sure that you are connected. If you cannot hear anything, most probably you are not connected. So please make sure to be connected. So I think we can start. Thank you so much for joining us, Liz. I'll give you the word.
Thank you so much, Andrea. It's an absolute pleasure. Welcome, everybody. I hope wherever you're joining us from today is less apocalyptic than the UK. We're having some interesting weather here right now. So luckily, we're doing this over a webinar rather than face-to-face. I want to talk to you about our relationship with a client who is still a new client, although this is 4 months on since the first time we presented this document. So obviously the onboarding process has developed quite nicely since then. We're exceptionally proud of our fledgling relationship with IBM. Having successfully participated in 2 separate tender processes, we're now essentially one of 4 UK agencies delivering event-related projects for IBM in the UK, and one of 2 agencies delivering for the same specification in Ireland. So 2 separate roster tenders. Both of them are a 3-year contract period, and they involve delivering for stakeholders that are based throughout Europe in various different European destinations, and also activating projects in various different European destinations as well. I'm going to start by just giving a little bit of background to our business and our perhaps life before WEConnect as well. So you can kind of understand our journey a little bit more. We were set up in 2004 by our managing director, Katie Savage, who's top left in that picture there that you can see. I joined shortly after with Katie leading the business. We started with a really strong automotive pedigree, and now we have quite a clear technology focus with a spread of clients. We have very particular values, and we always have. We've always been women-owned, obviously, as you can see, and we've always had very particular values about inclusiveness, about very, very high standards, about attention to detail, and what we tend to refer to as good old-fashioned service with a high level of creativity. The business is now a team of about 27 full-time employees, plus our global network of freelance support and specialists that we engage from time to time. We operate very, very internationally from our premises in the UK, and we've grown from really essentially being a core logistics provider to a fully integrated agency which provides production, creative, technical, digital, integrated marketing services. I'll talk a little bit around our initial certification with WEConnect. So forgive me, I believe there may be people on the webinar who are already certified and some that are potentially considering certification or starting to understand what the opportunities may be. So I shall talk to that effect. We, in all honesty, had no idea. We were happily trundling along as a women-owned business and growing quite nicely, and we had no idea that there was even such a platform where women-owned businesses could certify, and that might be something that was appealing to particular corporates or could open doors for us. So we were already working with another large technology client who is a corporate member of WEConnect. When they prompted us to certify and realised that we would be eligible for certification. So that happened in around 2016. So by that time we were already fortunate enough to have been operating with some really large international corporate businesses. So it was a familiar landscape to us at that time, and we were quite well set up to deliver the kind of business that's within the scope of the IBM agreement. Once we had certified, we had very little in terms of awareness and expectations in terms of what the opportunity might bring. And it's worth me saying, I think at this juncture, that our relationship with WEConnect and the certification journey for us, and the way that we've leveraged it, I feel, and immersed ourselves in that community has been hugely beneficial for our business. I'm an enormous advocate of WEConnect. I try and be involved in as many additional and side projects as possible, and it has opened some really interesting doors to us as an agency as well. I want to be really clear on what I feel WEConnect provides, and conversely to that, what I think is the responsibility of ourselves as vendors, and what the expectation is. WEConnect is an absolutely fantastic platform to connect corporates and providers of whatever support. They connect suppliers like ourselves to big corporates so that we can share experiences. They provide educational tools. There's lots of kind of mentorship opportunities, and it's great. And for that mentorship level, and you often meet people that perhaps don't often get the opportunity to engage with somebody else in a similar situation. So, another female business leader, or even another business leader. So there's many tools on offer. It's a really kind of open organisation, and a really genuine organisation that is there to champion women-owned business and help make those initial connections. So that's how I see, the relationship with WEConnect. And in terms of what the actual certification itself provides, and this is really quite key, depending on the kind of corporates that you're working with or looking to work with, is it means that your clients can officially class any spend with you as spend with a diverse vendor. So regardless of the fact that we were always women-owned before, until we've got that certification in place, every dollar, every pound that was spent with us, they couldn't officially say that it had gone to a diverse vendor because we didn't have that certification behind us. The certification is really an opportunity to start the conversation. It's a knock on the door. The rest of it is absolutely up to us as vendors to do the business. Which leads me into my next slide, where we talk about the corporate expectation. As vendors, we absolutely must be able to assure corporates that we can do the business at every stage of the interaction. So from marketing their services at initial events, such as making a great first impression, all the way through to onboarding and delivering. It's a platform, so it will help provide an introduction to an organisation. It might not even be the relevant individual in that organisation for your category of services. So it's about presenting yourself for consideration in a really relevant way. And what I mean by that is, if you're engaging with someone that perhaps is a supplier diversity figure in a very big organization, they're not necessarily going to be very literate with your category. You know, if your category like us is kind of marketing and event services, you might have to position that in a different way. It might be a good opportunity for them to then connect you with a stakeholder who would be, or a procurement person who would be more relevant within that category. So just kind of consider the audience and articulate what you do effectively. You've got to invest, and this is really, really key, you've got to invest in the infrastructure required to trade with large-scale global corporates. That is policies, procedures, business structures, you know, financial accounting, turnaround times, consistency of service, your disaster recovery plans, if you run into IT difficulties, all of these assurances, all of this infrastructure is hugely important and is just par for the course when dealing with anybody, you know, even a fraction of IBM's size. And again, you know, we were quite fortunate in that we were well placed to cope with all of that because we were already doing business of a similar scale. Also, as importantly, you've got to commit the resource required to fully respond accurately to the RFPs and then to do the business itself. You've got to be capable of delivering the services within scope in a manner which surpasses the competition. Essentially, you've still got to be the best agency in the room or the best provider in the room. You know, it's great that you're a diverse vendor. It's great that you're women, and that might get you a seat at the table. You know, it might get you a knock on the door, but you've absolutely, and we would never expect, you know, an opportunity to materialise purely because we were a women-owned business. I think to have an opportunity to start a conversation is one thing, but to be able to deliver is absolutely paramount. You've got to invest in ensuring your teams are equipped in terms of training, resources, everything they need to accurately and efficiently represent and service the new clients for the longer term. So to give you an idea for an organisation like IBM, in basic terms, that's things like being literate with the brand guidelines, which are extensive and multi-tiered in terms of sub-brands within the IBM brand. You've got to understand the tone of voice and who they are as a brand, as you do with any client, but again, the larger the organisation, the more complex that process becomes. Things like ethics and code of conduct. When you're working with technology providers, you know, you're adhering to the same terms that their assembly plants and their factories might adhere to. So there's lots of things in there that you might think aren't relevant to you, like child labour and conflict materials and all those sorts of things. So it's just understanding that you will have to, you know, adhere to those terms, and you will have to understand what they mean, and you will have to accept them. Expectations just in terms of how that account's to be managed, so your KPIs, your reporting, your billing structure. Again, for a highly structured and large organisation like IBM, of course, those expectations are extensive and they're really clearly laid out from the start. So just ensuring that the business is really set up to go in the event that you are successful with that initial RFP stage. So I shall talk about the RFP stage in and of itself as well. I think what's really, really key to say here is that you know, it's a very cheesy thing to say, but you've got to be in it to win it. So we all sit there, I'm sure we're all in the same position, we all get tenders that land on our desk maybe at, you know, 4 o'clock on a Friday afternoon when everybody in the office is at capacity working on live projects and working on existing tenders. And you have to weigh up whether the opportunity is tangible, how competitive it is, what kind of yield you're looking at in terms of revenue, the resource that you dedicate to it at pitch stage, as well as actually delivering it. All of those factors that will, you know, essentially help you calculate how best placed you are to respond in the first place and then to deliver the business. This opportunity came to us initially via WEConnect, via Maggie at WEConnect, to do with an Ireland opportunity. We were asked what our scope was in Ireland, and we're actually VAT registered in Ireland, which essentially, if it's an Irish registered client, makes it the same as in tax purposes of working with an Irish agency. So we responded to that, and then we subsequently received 2 separate roster tender opportunities, one for UK and one for Ireland. The decision to respond to those was essentially based on the fact that their scope of the tender was something that I was absolutely capable of managing independently without having to engage, you know, additional support. If I'm completely honest, had very low expectations of us going through at that stage. We had no existing relationship with IBM. We knew it would be a highly competitive tender. There was very little in that RFP document that would give a huge steer towards preferences, tone of voice, priorities as a brand, all those sorts of things that if you haven't got a handle on as an incumbent or with an existing relationship, make it quite difficult to work out how well placed you are to respond. Yeah, so we made the decision to respond to both, again with relatively low expectations. I managed that process myself end to end. I would say this was quite a prompt process in my experience. So the whole thing was turned around between May and August. So we were awarded the business at the end of the summer, and the opportunity came to us sort of at the beginning of the summer. And I think for a tender of this size, I'd say that was quite prompt, in all honesty. As is usual, the client set out key deliverables and deadlines at the beginning of the process and kept to that entire timeline and schedule, which again is quite unusual because quite often that will lapse at the client end due to various unforeseen factors. The process itself in stages included registering our intent to respond, which I did so after we received the documents. The standard sort of opportunity to ask questions, a round of clarification, submitting online using a procurement portal that IBM use. Again, various organisations are using various bits of software. It's quite often bespoke. We're relatively well versed in managing those for different clients, and some are easier to navigate than others and take a bit of time to get to grips with. We then engaged in a reverse auction. I don't know if anyone's got much experience with reverse auctions, but they are typically, and I'll be honest, relatively soul-destroying activities where it's a race to the bottom. You're online bidding against other competitor agencies who are undisclosed to you, so sometimes you don't know how many, sometimes you never really know who they are, and you're kind of racing to the bottom with your day rate. So you can see every single day rate that you've gone in with the initial tender stage, and then you're all effectively trying to undercut and outbid each other to get to the cheapest scenario. What I will say about this reverse auction experience, which was vastly more positive than some of the previous ones I've been involved in, is that the decision wasn't made based solely on cost. I think we finished up that reverse auction the cheapest on a couple of day rates, the most expensive on a couple of day rates, and in the middle on quite a few. So, but by no means were we the cheapest agency across the board. We weren't the most expensive, but we weren't the cheapest. But the decision on awarding the business was made on multiple other factors, which took into consideration our creativity, our qualifications, our personality, all those other sorts of things. Whereas in the past, sadly, I have been in the experience, had the experience where the view is taken that all of the agencies are equally competent, equally skilled, and then it really is just a bidding war essentially on price, which isn't a particularly comfortable situation for any of us to be in. After the reverse auction, we went in, we did a face-to-face presentation with a cross-section of stakeholders in the UK, and that was really a great opportunity to demonstrate our creativity, which is something that hadn't come into this tender really extensively before that point. In terms of the documents that we were required to submit, again, because I thought this might be helpful to sort of give an overview of what's required at that submission stage of the RFP process. So there's a relatively standard company questionnaire, which shouldn't take, the managing director or head of finance or business development director, whoever in your organisation has access to the figures, basically, to complete that. Full financial information, so your audited accounts, if you have audited accounts, balance sheet, profit and loss, that sort of thing, usually for the last 3 years. Our policies and our accreditation, so everything from our environmental policy, our quality policy, our inclusiveness commitment, our ISO certificate, because we are ISO accredited, and I'd really encourage anyone on the webinar who is not ISO accredited, who's wondering whether it might be beneficial for their business. I think if you're dealing with procurement teams a lot, then I would say absolutely yes. It means less to our stakeholders in marketing, obviously, than it does to procurement, but I think it's a real seal of approval and comfort factor when you are a small business, to demonstrate the fact that you've got such robust procedures that you're independently audited every year to retain your ISO qualification. We also submitted our initial rate card, which we then negotiated on at the reverse auction stage, and some sample event quotations. So the client had selected a couple of previous event specifications that they delivered that they asked us to sort of quote on retrospectively, and also a content proposal to give a very loose idea of our approach to creating content for, I believe it was one internal and one external conference and exhibition style event. One other thing that I will say that can be quite challenging, if it's helpful to know for anyone that's perhaps not used to pitching for a roster opportunity, it's very difficult to know what your best rates are when you've got no commitment or understanding of the volume, complexity, and diversity of the types of projects that you're going to be doing. And what kind of skill sets the people that you're putting on it are going to need to have, and where in the world they're going to be delivering. So that can be quite challenging to get to your best price accurately at that early stage, and something to just have in mind in terms of consideration. So, we were very lucky, and we were recognised for our efforts at the tender process, and we were told at the end of August that we were successful, and that we'd be onboarded very quickly. There was a very clear onboarding process. From a procurement perspective, we had really clear contacts for every challenge, essentially in that whole initial phase of setting us up as a preferred supplier. The contracting again was really clear. There were no nasty surprises there, because like most large corporates, IBM choose to share an example of the supplier contract with the tender. And it gives you an opportunity to read through it in detail, which I would recommend that absolutely everybody does, so that you're not getting too far down the line with something that you're not going to be able to contractually agree to for whatever reason. There's an online tool for finance administration. We had training on that. There were other elements of training and induction tools provided online, which are really helpful, and we make sure that everybody in the business goes through it. It might be several hours of very visual brand training or ethics training, and again, it's just really imperative to make sure that you dedicate the resource to everybody going through that in quite a quick space of time. When it is a roster position, they usually want you up and running straight away. If you're new to the roster, one thing that's wonderful is that stakeholders are quite often excited to be working with you, because you're new and they want to test you out and see what you're made of and see how creative you are. So you've just got to really jump on that fast-moving train, as the picture suggests, as quickly as you can. So internally, it's so key, I think, to apply the right talent and resource to the account immediately, as quickly as possible. You learn so much about a new client in that tender process that, from my side of things, there's a really involved process of trying to pass on all of that organisational information that you've picked up throughout the tender process to that account director or that project manager, whoever it is, to immerse them in the new client.
We lost you for a little bit.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you.
Yeah?
I'm not sure if you can hear me.
Can you hear me now?
Andrea, can you hear me?
I can hear you, Lynn.
Yeah, and Andrea can hear me, I think.
Yeah.
Should I continue? I had some notes through from some of the attendees saying that they can hear me. So shall I continue?
I can hear you very well, Liz.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to continue. Thank you very much, everyone, that's telling me they can hear me. I appreciate it. Okay, fantastic. So yeah, applying the right talent to the account, and that can be easier said than done if you've won something overnight and you've got to get it up and running the next morning. So I think, as hard as it is without a commitment, is to have that person, ready to go, or as ready to go as is possible within a small business. And then from a stakeholder perspective, it's, IBM has, I think, around 400,000 employees globally. We have 27 employees. So many different teams communicating with us, many different stakeholders situated all over the EMEA region. Quite complex team structures, potentially, if you're not used to working in that sort of environment. And the communication is so key. We do project meetings that might have up to 15 people on video call, all dialing from different locations, all with slightly different agendas for the same project. So being a really strong communicator and understanding what that client needs from you, and in an organisation like IBM, it might be what they need from you is to try and bring these people together to keep projects on track, to be a strong communicator and lead a project. So working that out and navigating that landscape as quickly as possible is really imperative. Help them to help you. Again, apologies, a little bit cheesy there, but it's true. Ask questions, share learning. Once you've delivered a document or a piece of information, say, how was that for you? This is the format that I would put it in. Is it helpful for you if I do it a different way? Is it too much detail? Is it not enough detail? And the absolute key thing, and it sounds so obvious, but just delivering on all of those promises that you made at pitch, So coming out of the IBM meeting, what was really apparent is that they really enjoyed our creativity during the pitch presentation. So of course, there's a big investment then from my point of view with our account director, ensuring that creativity is passed through, via the communications with the creative director, the producer, that we don't lose that momentum and we don't lose that edge. And yeah, I think absolutely key is understanding what those expectations are from a large corporate perspective from the get-go, and talking. I think there's probably a bit of a misconception that an organisation with the size of IBM, it may be a little bit impersonal, that it may be difficult to to ask questions or know who to approach if you've got a challenge, and that just hadn't been my experience with this organisation, or really with any of the big corporates that we work with. I think there are some really clearly defined roles, and I think that we've got the fantastic support of people like the lovely Andrea, who's on the call with us today, to really help each other get set up, help that onboarding process, to acknowledge that we're a new supplier, so we're not going to know it all just yet, and we're going to need a little bit of collaboration to become completely fluent. And it's a journey, and we're now, goodness, an extra 4 months in from the last time we presented this documentation, and it's growing all of the time. We're working on new projects every day. We're meeting new stakeholders every day. We're understanding more and more about the business and the future of the business day by day, and it's been a really fantastic journey. So I will stop waffling. Thank you very much for letting me share my experience with you, and I'd happily take some questions if there are any.
Sure, thank you. To some of your questions, the questions that you have asked, everybody, well, some people have asked if the video will be shared. Yes, this will be uploaded to our YouTube channel, and we will share the information. Then I also have some questions about, for example, which industry projects are allocating. I don't understand very well this question. But I guess that Ratnam is trying to ask if what kind of industry is IBM looking to buy from. Maybe Andrea can help us with that question.
Yes. Well, we buy all kinds of stuff. So from services to software, hardware, like from KTS marketing. Events. I'm not really buying the beauty stuff. I mean, just imagine what a company will buy. Like, we also buy furniture and all kinds of stuff. Some things we don't buy directly, but we have a global supplier that does that globally for us, but we're happy to do introductions if it's just one thing that, let's say, a women's own business can provide.
Okay, thank you. And can you share?
I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, I think you did. We can follow up. And can you share also a little bit about some of the supplier eligibility criteria details? They want to know a little bit more about I believe what is the most important things to take into account.
Yeah, I think Liz mentioned most of it. Like, you need to be aware of your company. You need to be aware that if you want to work with a corporation, you have to have a healthy finance, balance sheet, you have to make sure that you don't have any child labor and so on. We actually provided an SME white paper for RFPs, so do's and don'ts and obstacles when you work with corporations. That'll be shared with Maggie, and I think she's sent it out. I can also share that with you, Andrea, and you can send it to the attendees.
Definitely, we got it.
So
Great.
there's a lot of good info.
I've seen the white paper. It's great. It's great information. I'll make sure that everybody has access to it.
Cool. Thanks.
Okay, so I think, let me see if there are more questions. Elise, can you tell us a little bit more about, what did it take for your company internally to, be able to manage these larger contracts? Did you have to make a lot of changes? How did you manage this, all of a sudden this growth? Sometimes that is difficult for some companies. Could you, share a little bit about, what I don't know, hard decisions you had to make, or how do you handle that new pressure?
So we recruited, I think in the instance of IBM, because obviously the volume of briefs that were coming in pretty much immediately, we recruited a dedicated account director. So the initial process was really getting that person up to speed as quickly as possible, and helping them navigate the account structure, and by that I mean, the elements I spoke on, like the KPIs, the reporting, the budget templates, various, IBM, like any big organization, has various different codes and policies that they've got to adhere to. They have different allowances for, staff expenses and things like that, so that when we're booking dinners and accommodation, we've got to know which bands we're working in. So there's quite a lot of regulatory structure, I suppose I would call it. So it's just time, essentially. It's ensuring that we understand it as business leaders, that we have access to all of the information and expectations from the client, which IBM were very forthcoming about providing, and taking the time to sit with that new account director to ensure that they could understand it, they could manage it, if they had any concerns or challenges, that you're really supporting them through it. It's really about resource, to be honest, more than anything else. It's just ensuring that you've got the right people ready to go at the right time, so that onboarding process puts you in the best possible light. Yeah, hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. We also have another question from Kalyani. She says, in your case, you already had big clients before you went to IBM. What if we have only small clients? Of course, we have all the infrastructure mentioned in place. Is the eligibility criteria of IBM very high?
That might be one Andrea's best place answering, but the only little thing I'd probably like to add is that from my experience with IBM and other organisations, I don't necessarily think that. I'll give you another example. We've just won a pharmaceutical client, a very big pharmaceutical client. Again, it was an introduction that was made via WEConnect, and I had a very honest conversation with the head of procurement there, and I said, we don't have any pharmaceutical clients. Is it an issue for you that we've not done big pharma business before? And the answer was absolutely not, because we want a more creative agency. We want someone that's coming with fresh thinking. As long as you are a robust partner, which it sounds like the example that you've just read out is a robust partner, and you've got whatever it is they need, whether it's creativity or dynamism or expertise in a certain region, my expectation would be that you would still very much be up for consideration. But I'll let Andrea speak on that from a specific IBM perspective, perhaps.
Yeah, well, IBM has a very strong supply diversity program, and we actually have to include one diverse supplier. So that means we have to have these women-owned or ethnic minority-owned businesses in our tenders for the same reasons that Liz just mentioned, because they usually have other ideas, they are innovative, they have are more flexible than, let's say, big companies. And of course, at the end, like KTS, you go through an RFP process. If you can convince the procurement people with what you do, you always have a chance to get business, even though you haven't worked with corporations before.
Great, thank you. I have another question. I guess this is also for Liz and Andrea. How important was the certification when for you, Liz, when you were participating in these RFPs process? How important was to be certified? And Andrea, how important is for you that a supplier is certified?
I'll just answer the first part of that question. So to my understanding, to my knowledge, we wouldn't have received this opportunity if we weren't certified. So we got this opportunity via WEConnect. So my understanding is that Andrea went out to WEConnect and said, I would like to include some, or one of Andrea's colleagues perhaps, I'd like to include some women-owned businesses in the mix for this tender. And then the opportunity for the RFP came out through that network. So again, for me, it's always about that initial opportunity rather than winning the tender. It's about being included, I think, rather than having your certification dictate who does and doesn't win the bid.
Right, so as I said, we have to include one diverse supplier for each tender. That means we have to find them, and that's why we work with organizations like WEConnect, where my whole procurement team in EMEA, they are contacting WEConnect depending on where the tender is or where the needs to be provided to actually get an overview or an input from their certified members. We are also accepting women-owned businesses that are not certified, let's say WEConnect, but if certification is available, like for example, in Europe, where we have certification in UK, Ireland, Netherlands, Switzerland, and Germany, you have to be certified to actually then be accepted as women-owned business. But you get invited, even though you wouldn't be being certified. But once you are selected, we require you to be certified. And of course, as I said, you have a bigger chance of being connected to one of the corporations. I mean, IBM is not the only corporate member of WEConnect International. There are lots of others, and that's your best chance to actually get in a business, or get into business opportunities with other corporations.
Great, thank you. We have another question from Barbara. She's asking, what type of RFP submissions are you seeing? While they used to be paper documents with some photos, we are now hearing of proposals with embedded videos and even some companies using virtual reality to present their product or program with tour of company, venue, event, product. Curious what IBM is seeing today.
I guess this question was to me. I'm not actively involved in any RFPs once they start. So as far as I know, we have a tool that we work with to actually send out our RFPs. And then there are different ways. For example, that RFP that KTS Events went through, as Liz said, was a reverse auction. So that was in a tool, and you had to provide your prices, and then there was other bids going in. But as far as I know, our bids or RFPs are usually through a tool, and it's all electronic. But I don't know of any videos or artificial virtual tours or something.
So if I'll chip in with a bit of an example, if that's okay. So absolutely. So the actual submission process is typically online through a tool. The types of files that you can embed and attach would be relatively restricted at that stage. But at the presentation stage, I mean, it's yours to kind of do what you wish with. So we did a couple of demonstrations in our presentation of augmented reality just on an iPad, a relatively straightforward example that was given in the context of something interesting that could be done on a small exhibition stand. And the feedback on that was quite positive, and it wasn't necessarily a hugely costly thing for us to do, and it's an example of something that we deliver all of the time. I have heard of some of the larger agencies and our kind of global leader competitors doing everything from a sensory waterfall to virtual reality to creating a complete virtual reality fly-through of an event space if they were creating a really bespoke environment. Obviously, the creation of that kind of digital content is hugely costly, even if you do have an internal resource and internal team that can produce it. So all I would say is that if you want to get into those sort of realms, just make sure you can afford the loss. If you can invest that amount of money in the pitch, you can afford to lose it. And that the win, is attractive enough and warrants the spend. I would say that I think a lot of clients, even the big ones, it's not necessarily about having a huge budget. It's about being clever. Sometimes it's about doing more with less. So I think that could potentially backfire if you were to spend a lot of money. I think if I'd have walked into the IBM pitch with a piece of kit that would have cost £20,000–30,000 to demonstrate, I don't think I would have got the same results as demonstrating something that's essentially free on an app on my iPad. And that's really relevant to them and the kind of thing that they might roll out at some of their smaller exhibition stands. So I guess in short, it's about being relevant and making sure you're comfortable with the investment and that the investment is exemplary of what the client's potential investment might be. But yeah, I mean, the sky's the limit. People are doing some really crazy things in pitch right now.
Great. Thank you so much, Liz. I don't think we have any more questions. Just remember, everyone who are, all of you who are interested in WEConnect International, take a look at our website to see if the certification is available in your country. I want to thank you, Liz and Andrea, for your time. It has been a great webinar. I think a lot of really relevant information was provided, and I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did.
Thank you so much, Andrea, and thanks everybody for joining. It was a pleasure to speak with you.
I don't know if you wanna, well, I know you organize events. There might be some, WEBs that are WBEs that might be interested in maybe, getting in touch with you. Mm-hmm. I would recommend that I'm going to do a follow-up email with everybody. So let me know if you want me to share your email. There might be, new business opportunities with other WBEs somewhere in the world. Mm-hmm. So I'll do that. I'll share information, and I don't know if you want to share a last something.
I'm more than happy for my details to be shared as well. And if there's anything, if anybody has any other questions, or if there's anything anyone would like to discuss, I'm a big champion of peer-to-peer support and mentorship and anything like that. So my phone is always on if anybody would ever like to have a chat with me.
Great, thank you so much. I'm getting a lot of thank you messages here. It was very informative, most useful. Thank you very much, Liz. Thank you, ladies. Thank you so much. And I'll follow up with all of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a great weekend, everyone. Pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you. Have a great weekend.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.